What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today we're going to talk about Limiting Factor, a community battle that is happening today. If you aren't familiar with community battles, I've done some before on this channel, but it is a way to win a Marvel Snap Season Pass on the official Discord. Tournament's happening later today, so if you were watching this video the day it goes live, you might still have an opportunity to participate yourself. But every community battle has a different rule set, and in this one, your deck can only use 3 unique energy costs. So if your deck has cards that cost 2, 4, and 5 in it, then you can't have any other random cost cards in your deck. Hopefully, all of that makes sense. It'll make more sense as we go through this video. I'm going to discuss what I think are the best options to play with this limiting factor constraining your deck choices. There are some banned cards as well. Zabu and Silver Surfer, both of those they felt like are too big of payoffs for specific energy costs already. I don't think that Zabu is nearly in the same category as Silver Surfer anymore. Zabu doesn't really see that much play, but Silver Surfer makes a lot of sense. You could just make a deck with all 3 cost cards, and Silver Surfer would just tie all of those together. So had to ban that one. Thanos is also banned because it adds a 1 cost card and a 2 cost card into your deck, and then it's a 6 cost card that can become a 5 cost card. So it would just allow you to bypass the limitations way too easily. High Evo, I'm not actually sure why they removed. Kang, I think they just like removing it when they remove all of the other big bads, and there is sort of a limit on the time that you have to play these games, so that's a reason to get rid of Kang. And Galactus, I actually think is just a balance restriction, because when you are limiting your deck with other ways with these community battles, Galactus actually just winds up being like a pretty strong deck to play because your opponents don't have as many tools to interact with you. I briefly built a Galactus deck as one of the decks we're gonna look at in a moment, and then I was like, wait a minute, because I was about to add Kang to the deck. I was like, ooh, Kang's kind of good in a sort of like Galactus ramp deck, and then I realized, okay, yeah, they're probably both banned. So had to throw away that one, but I've got a whole bunch of other deck lists that I want to share before the tournament starts today. And then probably tomorrow's video will be my games that I played in the tournament, but today I'm just going to be talking about the event and letting you know what I think are some of the decks to try out. There's some prizes that go along with participating in the event. The main one is that you can potentially win a season pass. And also don't forget, if you are subscribed to this channel and you comment on any of my videos this season, you are also entered into a giveaway to win credits, premium mystery variants, and gold. So make sure you subscribe, even just to catch the next video, because I'm sure I'll have a lot of fun with this event. I've got a whole bunch of deck lists that I want to get through here, so without further ado, let's hop into it. One of the first ideas that I had with a format like this is let's play some cheap interactive cards with Sarah. And I think that that's a pretty strong combination. Sarah already wants to max out on 2 and 3 cost cards because those are the cards that Sarah gives the biggest discounts to mathematically, giving a 50% discount to 2 cost cards and a 33% discount to 3 cost cards. We have seen Sarah recently paired with Ronin, with like Maximus to go along with that, and Fastos can also be an interesting way to discount some of these cards. Fastos can also discount 1 cost cards, but we can't make all of that work in one deck for this tournament, so I think that this is like a reasonable starting place. From here, I kind of started to think, all right, well, if we're already playing 5 cost cards and 2 cost cards, what are some other good 5 cost cards that we can kind of sneak in for power that aren't Ronin? And one other direction that immediately came to mind was Cersei. Now this list eschews playing 3-cost cards at all. It is playing some more interesting 2-cost cards in the form of Mr. Sinister and Mysterio to combo with Cersei, and then once you've got both of those in the deck and Cersei, Mockingbird can slide right in as a pretty solid 5-cost card that will never actually cost 5. And from there, honestly, like, it's probably best to just throw in some 3-cost cards as well, maybe some more interaction instead of Lizard and Silk. Play Brood, play Red Guardian, and some other interesting interactive cards. You could also play Cosmo too, but you should cut Sentry. And I just thought Sentry Annihilus was like pretty good, mostly because Cersei Sentry is really good. I think that this deck is probably trying to do too much when you put all of those things together, and honestly there's not like another great 4-cost card that you really want. You could put Shang-Chi in the deck. That's obviously a really good interactive card too, but these are kind of just ideas. This was the first thing that I threw out there, and we're just going to go through a bunch of ideas in this video, and I'm going to try to make it through as many things as possible before my camera cuts out. So we have got Destroy. I think that this is potentially one of my top picks. So I think that initially you think about Destroy and you're like, all right, well, too many cards in this list you're not going to be able to play. So I am probably not going to be able to make Destroy work. Namely, you can't play Death, right? So if you play Death, then you only get to play 2 other costs worth of cards. So Death is a really big drawback. However, I think that Arnim Zola and Null are still 2 really big payoffs. This deck also leans really heavily on Bast to pump up Deadpool, but it really doesn't shrink any card in this deck other than Deathlock. So Bast is pretty solid here, giving Deadpool a +2. It's like a mini Forge sort of thing. And then we also have Nova plus Deadpool, and we can clean up the hood with Killmonger and still get to play 3 different Destroy cards, which I think is probably enough. There is also a combo here of Negasonic Teenage Warhead plus Arnim Zola, which will allow you to protect from your opponent's plays in 2 different locations, potentially 3. I'm not actually sure how that interaction works out when you kill the Negasonic, if it like resets it. I think you have to Arnim Zola the Negasonic before it activates, but either way, that's another cute little way to pump up a Null, because you don't have access to Shang-Chi Arnim Zola in a list like this. But I think that this list plays enough 1-cost cards initially that you can still justify playing Destroy even with these limitations. And the deck is going to have a lot of the same game plans that it would as a normal Destroy deck. So I think that this can definitely work. Another deck that I don't think has to make too many changes, but there's definitely some changes here, is a Hela list. So there were a few things that stood out to me about Hela, one of them being that I unlocked Corvus in Spotlight Caches this week. So I guess I kind of got here in a little bit of a backwards way. We're going to look at a Sandwave deck later on. I just started to think that Sandwave could be good. Ramp and stuff could be good to kind of like go over the top of your opponents. And this list is maybe not super optimized. There are a little bit of different interesting choices that we make here. Like you'll notice no Lady Sif. Lady Sif is typically played in Hela lists because it will always discard Death. However, we're not able to play Death. So instead, we're just playing Swordmaster and Gambit, which might be too much. It might be too many discard cards, and you might actually want like a 5-cost card or 2 in here and go for like the ramp of Corvus. I haven't played with Corvus too much, but we are going to look at a different ramp deck, and I think that there's potentially some space for like a hybridization that isn't quite this all in on Hela, but is still playing some amount of discard and reanimator. But one thing that I think is really cool here is Gambit, which is obviously here to like help fuel up your Hela, but it's actually a cool card to Odin on as well. So I think that that could be cool. We've got Leader, Doctor Doom, and potentially sometimes Hela to all reactivate with Odin, and then maybe like in some crazy cases Magneto. And I do think that the Black Knight plus Blade combo is worth going into 1-cost cards for, more so than it's worth it to play 5-cost cards and just try to curve out in that way. So you do have to make some weird concessions in your curve, and because of this, like other than Hela and other than ramp decks, I don't think many people are going to be playing 6-cost cards like at all. I think that most people are probably going to stop at 5, maybe 4 for some people. I do have some decks in here that stop at 4, but just saying, no, I'm going to play all the 6-cost cards allows you to go over the top in a lot of different matchups in a way that I think will be pretty important. We'll look at some other decks that don't go over the top and why those might be bad. Here's a deck that stops at 4. Loki. There's a lot of options for Loki. Obviously, you want to play Loki. I'm pretty sure you want to play Quinjet plus Snowguard. And then from there, you do have the options of 3s, which give you Agent Coulson, Werewolf by Night, and interactive cards, or 2s, which give you Valentina, Shadow King, like other interactive cards. Maybe like Sentinel, maybe Collector. And then there's also, like, you could just go the other way with it, potentially even cutting, like, Loki maybe and going for, like, Devil Dinosaur. I don't think that that's the best route, though. I think that this is probably what you want to do with Loki, and I do really like an opportunity to play Nick Fury as well. So Nick Fury Quinjet is always, I think, a solid combo, and this deck kind of like has to make use of it because you don't really have access to over-the-top cards like Devil Dinosaur, and that's kind of the idea here. So Loki, you can potentially steal your opponent's over-the-top cards if you just draw your Loki, but otherwise, Loki lists kind of lack a way to just like get big. You've got Werewolf by Night. You could play Elsa. You could play, I mean, Thena even if you're going to go into 2s. There was another card. Oh, some people just play like Gladiator in Loki list just to be a 3/8, and could be possible that that's what you want. Maybe even instead of Juggernaut or Rogue in this list. But Nick Fury just allows you to find ways to go over the top. It's now a 4/6. So I think that this is worth exploring, especially in today's tournament, but I'm going to be playing some Nick Fury coming up as well on the channel. So stay tuned for that as well. I will have another video on Nick Fury, I think coming out on Monday even. So that is something to look forward to. Can't talk about Limited Factor without at least discussing a Kazar deck. So here's probably where you'll want to be. These cards right here, Kyera to protect your 1-cost cards, and Cosmo to protect your 1-cost cards. Shanna to make some more because we already want to play Kyera, and Kazar being the main payoff card alongside Cole Obsidian, and then a slew of different, probably like the most powerful 1-cost cards that you can play, especially with these synergies. Debris allows you to have a little bit of interaction while also being able to pump up your own rocks. So I thought that was a cute addition because we're not able to play like, you can't play, I mean, you could play Patriot, but we're only really playing Squirrel Girl for that right now, plus the Debris, of course. What was I just about to say? Oh, you're not playing like a Blue Marvel or really any other payoff cards other than Kazar and arguably Cole Obsidian. You can't play Dazzler, so that's a little bit awkward. I could see wanting to play like Bishop, just like another card that's going to get pumped up from you playing a bunch of cards. But I actually don't hate this list, and I think it could be cool. I think that this is, in some respects, it's interesting. I think in some respects this is like level 1 that you get at, And that's part of the reason that I kind of like Destroy, being able to play Killmonger. Yes, this has Kyera and Cosmo, but still just Killmonger to keep decks like this honest, whether you're playing Killmonger in like your Serra decks or you're playing it in like a Destroy style deck. I think either of those could be pretty good. And that's why I'm not sure how popular a deck like this will be. I didn't bother naming all of these decks, by the way. I just figured we're gonna go through all of them real quick. Doesn't really matter. This is the Sandwave list. 4 different ramp cards, 4 different 5-cost cards, 4 different 6-cost cards. It's a pretty classy list when you draw it up like that. It might even be too much ramp. I don't know if Corvus really wants to be in this deck. Without Hela, maybe you could put Hela in, but I just put it in because, so this is the list that I was looking at for a second, and I was like, what do I want as the 12th card here? I don't feel like I need another 5-cost card, and honestly, I've got all of the best 6-cost cards. So from there, I was just like, all right, well, let's just play another card that is like occasionally going to be able to ramp me, and even if I don't wind up needing it most of the time, that like 5% of the time when I do, and it's just a reasonable backup card, yes, I've got to discard some cards and that might screw me over, but it's better than just not having ramp. The biggest reason that I think, well, actually, there's 2 reasons that I think Sandwave might be good. The first part is sand, the second part is wave. So if you are assuming that most of your opponents are just going to be playing a bunch of 2-cost cards, a bunch of 1-cost cards even, Sandman is very good. However, Wave is also really good if you're expecting a bunch of opponents to not play 6-cost cards, because then your opponent won't get the same benefit from you as Wave. You'll be able to flop down a Doctor Doom or a Magneto or even potentially a Red Hulk, and meanwhile your opponent will only get to play like a 5-cost card, or maybe even just a 4-cost card. Maybe they just play their Loki or something, but either way, you've gotten much more value out of Wave in this format compared to some other formats. So I do think that could be really powerful. I like the idea of White Tiger plus Cersei. You go like Electro into White Tiger, into Odin into Cersei, or Cersei into Odin. Either of those routes can work. Cersei into Odin's actually even better, and I think that all of that seems pretty good, so I think that I could honestly see playing this. Yeah, that's really all I got to say. Seems like a good deck. Moving on, Cerebro. Now there's 2 different flavors of Cerebro that both could work. You're not going to be able to play the perfect Cerebro 2 or Cerebro 3 lists. I'm not sure that I love either of them for totally different reasons. Cerebro 3, you can almost fully play, because typically that deck does not play 1-cost cards. It plays 2s, which is like sometimes even just Sentry and Scarlet Witch. Then it plays a bunch of 3s, including Magic in the Cerebro 3. Doesn't make it into Cerebro 2. And then plays some 5s as well. Plays Valkyrie, Iron Man, and then Wasp alongside Bast. And without Bast, I think that Cerebro 3 is a lot worse. It's potentially still playable though. It now has access to Red Guardian and some other cool tech cards that I think Cerebro 3 is probably stronger overall, but Cerebro 2 does have some cool things going for it. Now I will say, Echo, I don't think it's going to be like super high impact. Also, Goose, I don't think is going to be super high impact, because a lot of people are going to be playing a bunch of 2s and they're going to be able to get under your Goose quite easily. Storm is always good. I think Negasonic Teenage Warhead is always good, and Brood is like a fantastic card that Cerebro 2 gets to play. Shadow King's a little bit awkward on the curve, and then it also gets Nico to draw cards, and you also get to play Mr. Negative 2. I think that Cerebro 2 is strong. I just feel like there's something it's missing. The only card you aren't able to play in Cerebro 2 that normally does get played is Blue Marvel. You have to choose between Blue Marvel and a variety of 2-cost cards. I think this interaction here is a little bit better. Even if I'm saying I don't think Echo is great, I think it's still probably worth it over Blue Marvel. So I'm not totally sold on Cerebro 2, but it is definitely possible. Oh, I did also throw in a Cerebro 3 list. Yeah, Killmonger, you get to throw that into, and I really like Ravonna and Quake. Okay, I would play, yeah, I forgot I made this one too. I would play Cerebro 3 before I played Cerebro 2. There's just so many cool cards in this, and I am deciding not to play the Bast, not to play the Wasp. Obviously, it's going to be hard to convince anybody to play Wasp in this tournament, but I do think that the Valkyrie and the Iron Man can still do some work, especially alongside Invisible Woman. There is another way you could take this, cut the Iron Man, cut the Valkyrie, and play Shang-Chi. So that's an option. And then one other thing that you could do is throw in Hobgoblin as a 5-cost kind of haymaker, but the extra turn that you get from magic, in addition to the work that Invisible Woman can do. No Luke in this list. You could cut Killmonger for Luke. I could see that being reasonable, but I do think Killmonger's kind of a cool card for this tournament, just because there are going to be people playing Kazar. Those people will probably play Kyera, but sometimes you can get them, and sometimes they won't expect the Killmonger, and you can win a bunch of cubes against them. So, do think Cerebro 3 is pretty good. This is kind of a joke deck, so I showcased this deck on Tuesday when Fastos came out. Fastos making all your 1-cost cards cost 0, Jane Foster to draw them all, and then Hit Monkey to capitalize on all of that. Can't play Absorbing Man in this version of the deck, and I'm playing Bishop as another payoff card, as well as Nakia to take advantage, and I think that's basically it as far as changes that I've made. I think that you could maybe consider some other different types of interaction, or potentially Elsa as just like another good payoff card. Oh, that's right, Dazzler I also had in this. Dazzler is a pretty good payoff card, definitely better than Bishop and Nakia, but you can't play... You can only play 3 different costs, so that's where you're stuck. I'm not sure if there's a... Yeah, you could throw Blue Marvel in here as well as another 5, but the way that the deck works, you almost always want to play Jane on 5, and if you don't have it, I don't know, like, do you want to be just playing a Blue Marvel in those games, or do you just want to be retreating? Probably just retreating. So there is that deck, kind of a silly one, but I figured I would still bring it up. And then what is our last deck here? Okay, yeah, just like a boring deck, actually. Maybe this one's a little bit too boring to finish off on, but I think that Angela's still good. I think that you could pair it with Hope Summers and Thena, potentially make this an Elsa deck, and I do think that you can actually get away with fitting in Kitty Pryde into an Angela deck still, because you can make it just 2s, 3s, and 1s, and still feel pretty comfortable with this type of curve in your deck. So I think that something like this can work. I have not touched move decks, like, ever in Marvel Snap, if we're going to be honest, but there is definitely, like, most move cards, if you look at them here, this gives me the full screen, right? Yeah. Most move cards are really just 1s, 2s, and 3s, and I think that you could probably get away with, like, I'm talking like Vulture, Cloak, Doctor Strange, like actual make a real honest to goodness move deck I think could actually work today. And you wouldn't be able to play Heimdall. You're probably not playing like Spider-Man 99. You just play 1s, 2s, and 3s, I think. But all of the main setup and payoff cards, you'd probably play Hercules if you had it, and Nocturne, another card that I did not mention for this deck and for Move proper, and also just a lot of the other decks that I showcase could probably use Nocturne in them. Nocturne now is the best card that I do not own in Marvel Snap, now that I own Red Guardian. But yeah, just like another idea. But let me know what ideas you have for this tournament, especially if you watch this video early, because I'm going to be playing in this tournament later on today. I should have said this at the top of the video, but I believe the tournament goes from 3 to 6 p.m. EST, either 3 to 6 or 3 to 5. And you just try to play as many games as you can in that time period to qualify for the season pass. But I'm just going to play as many games as I possibly can for fun, because this seems like such a cool idea. But if you come up with any ideas before the tournament starts, let me know, because maybe I will want to play your ideas. If you have some, I think I've probably covered it all, but maybe there's some other cool things that I'm not thinking of. There's definitely some things that you can't play and some things that I don't really want to play. Like Darkhawk kind of locks you into 1s, 2s, and 3s because you have to play Korg and you have to play... what else is there? Korg, Rockslide, and Darkhawk. So yeah, that is a little bit... Oops, I was just trying to make myself bigger while I just chat here at the end of the video. But I don't think I really want to play Darkhawk. Another one of my favorite cards, Pixie. I don't really think you want to play because you have to play Pixie, you have to play Mobius, and then once you're playing both of those, what do you just play like a bunch of 5s so that you can refresh the cards? Pixie is just like not really a great card when you're limiting your deck around costs. So that's kind of a funny one. And I do think that there's probably some strength in Loki. I'm actually surprised that they did not ban Loki, because they typically do ban Loki for these types of tournaments for like a variety of reasons. It's just like skirts the expectations of deck building restrictions when you're just like, okay, I'm going to play my opponent's deck as well. Some type of Ravonna deck, Thena Ravonna with Sage, is still probably good. Might be a 2-3-5 deck with Iron Man, Mystique, Sage, Morph. Yeah, all of these cards that are currently on the screen, so I think that that could be something good. What else? I think that that's mostly it. Miss Marvel, I don't think is super easy to make work, but maybe I'm just not giving Miss Marvel enough credit. Maybe it is just still a fantastic card and should be played in like your Loki decks and stuff. Definitely possible I'm missing that. I did not see a way to make like traditional discard work. High Evo is banned, and I think that's most of it. Oh yeah, so you could play like a little bit more of a traditional Annihilus list, going Sentry Annihilus Hood as a starting place, and that locks you into 1s, 4s, and 5s. So I think that that's like a little bit too expensive. I don't think you can play 1s, 4s, and 5s just because 1s don't have as big of an impact. And then you're stuck with 4s and 5s, which are just too expensive. You can only play one of each of those on a given turn. One thing that I did think is kind of cool, Black Bolt and Stature both are 5-cost cards, so maybe there is something there. It's not really something I've explored too much, and typically these also go along with Silver Samurai, and then you're in that same issue where you're playing 4s and 5s in your deck. I do think that there's Cersei lists that don't have to run Sentry, but I didn't hate the build that I came up with, which gets to run Sentry while also playing 2s, so you have a bunch of other stuff, and I kind of do like 2s with Cersei in general, specifically just Mysterio and Mr. Sinister I think are great and potentially underexplored with Cersei. Gilgamesh plus Blue Marvel, I think, is definitely a potential combo, and I think that that rounds out the video. Yeah, She-Hulk and Sasquatch, I think the 6s are mostly just too expensive, so I don't think that's where you want to be. But again, let me know if you have any ideas and if you yourself are planning on playing in this tournament. And if you weren't planning on playing in this tournament, but now you are thanks to some of the ideas that you've seen in this video, and now you're thinking it might look sweet, or you just didn't hear about it before, but now you have. Either way, that's going to be it for me today. Good luck for all of my fellow competitors, but that's going to be it for me. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.